Hey, what's shaking, everyone? So I got this article pulled up. I seen it was trending yesterday just before I was going to bed after I was done doing all the editing for the videos yesterday, and I read through it and it managed to knock me right out because boy was it loaded right to the tits with absolute crap. Like, if you're going to attack Trump for anything, I think the last thing on your list should be support for the armed forces. Like, this guy, predating his presidential run, has always been about support for veterans. And Jeffrey Goldberg, in his infinite wisdom, decides that, yeah, you know what? If we're going to smear Trump, we're going to have him say that dead soldiers are losers. And what's something else wild we can say? Yeah, he skipped out in Paris because it was raining. He couldn't land. That was a lie. And Trump didn't want to get his hair messed up because it was raining. Like, I can pull up pictures of Trump in the rain. It's not fucking difficult. Anybody can do it. But for this asshole to slander the president on the backs of support for veterans, like I've previously said, is bananas, because nobody in their right mind would believe it, but also nobody in their right mind would peruse the Atlantic, because if you ever find yourself in needing to, give up your will to live, I would recommend the Atlantic wholeheartedly, because it's just a slime factory, really. But enough about that. This is more or less just a backdrop, because the media and journalists are getting, I don't know, more sophisticated, because I don't want to say that they're getting smarter. They're just getting more, sophisticated in their tactics, because what they did here to make this a quasi-believable article was say that Trump referred to Senator John McCain, the venerable war hero, a man who could never do any wrong, even though he refused to back down from the Senate because he had a fucking brain tumor, or he called his wife a malignant cunt, or he conspired with the Vietnamese after they captured him. Oops. Or he conspired with somebody pranking him, pretending to be the Prime Minister of Russia. And the list goes on and on. John McCain is not a figure that can go without scrutiny. He was a do-nothing Republican that led to the rise of Donald Trump. To be completely honest, the man was a serial runner-up. John McCain, obviously, because, well, Trump ran for office once and became the president. He likes to tell you that on occasion, in case you haven't heard it. But it is true that Trump did call John McCain a loser. It just wasn't in reference to the fact that he was captured as a war hero. You see this kind of slander tactic whenever they bring up, I know I brought it up at least 45 times on my fucking channel already, but the very fine people on both sides, they forget to mention the preceding sentence that says, except for the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, I denounce those vehemently. He said that, people. And then he proceeded with, but there are very good people on both sides. In a case like this, where he was talking about John McCain, he was referring to John McCain as a loser for not winning in 2008 when he ran against Barack Obama. So, once again, cherry picking quotes and not being fair to President Trump, which most of the media hasn't been for the past 4 years, so why am I surprised? Anyways, so what I really wanted to discuss, I wanted to get a little conspiratorial. And this is just the background for it. Because everybody's aware that there's a better than average chance that there's going to be mail-in voting on a large scale. Now, as much coverage as the media is running, and they are gaslighting the fuck out of the riots right now, saying that Joe Biden's been the only person to denounce the violence in Kenosha and in Portland, and Trump needs to do the same. Fucking what? He's the law and order candidate. He's been vehemently denouncing all of these violent riots and assaults that have been taken against multiple Trump supporters. That happens a lot more than the other way around, by the way. And the media is just completely running coverage for Joe Biden and the Democrats. But to bring it back to mail-in voting, I think they're going to cheat Republicans. But I don't think that they're going to cheat Trump. Hear me out on this. The ticket of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is so fucking weak and so laughable. They have yet to receive any sort of bump post the DNC and this apology tour where they're just going and following in Trump's steps, like in Kenosha. When Trump announced he was going to Kenosha, Joe Biden said he wasn't going to. And then, a little bit of a slip in the polls, and guess who's going to Kenosha? Fucking Joe Biden, of course. And I just think they are destined to get a fucking shit kicking come November. I've said a landslide. A lot of people more experienced in the game than me have said landslide. But they always tinge it with, like, mail-in votes are going to roll in for the president after the fact, and that's going to go from a November 3rd evening landslide victory or substantial victory for Trump. And then in the coming days, it's just going to be more and more late mail-in votes that are counted, and eventually Joe Biden wins. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that is way too obvious. I think that they're more likely to cheat senatorial and House races at the state and federal level. Because, hear me out, it's already been established that mail-in voting at any kind of scale is 100% faulty. Like, you look at, I'll bring up an example of Paterson, New Jersey. There were, the entire election had to get redone because there was too much incorrect mail collecting, too many errors in the mail-in ballots, long story short. And every time that it's been tried on any kind of significant level, mail-in voting has failed. So at this point, it's been well established that the president fears mail-in ballots because they're very susceptible to fraud. And I don't blame him. But like I said earlier about the Senate and House races at the local and federal level, I think they're going to be cheating those, the Democrats are. And if that's where you want to find your mail fraud, if you're convinced that mail fraud is going to happen, it's going to happen at those levels. Because if the Democrats can get the House and they can get the Senate, and Trump's the president, well, they can run their impeachment shit over and over again. They can block anything that he tries to do, and they just invalidate the next 4 years. And in my opinion, I see that as the most likely fraud scenario. Now, the reason that this article is in the background is because they like to do little sneaky things, the media and the Democrats. They don't like to go all out in one direction. They just like to plant the little seeds every once and again. They like to drop the fake stories. They like to issue the retractions in the next day. Like, this article's already been debunked with the previously mentioned visit to Paris that got scrapped because I do believe that the rain was too significant for the chopper to properly land on site. So they couldn't make it happen, and Trump was understandably upset because he wants to be there for fallen warriors and, wounded soldiers. So instead, that they can, Jeffrey Goldberg can print that fake story, that unresearched story, and then maybe maybe by Monday he might issue a retraction, and a quarter, an eighth of the people are going to see the retraction, and everybody who initially read the Atlantic story, this story here, is just going to remember all the slander. So you just keep doing that little bit by little bit, and then you end up with a demoralized base that, looks at mail-in fraud and either thinks that there's nothing you can do about it, or just believes that it's a secure system. Like, this isn't unprecedented before. Look at the midterms last year. I cite Razor Fist as one of my big inspirations. He's been at this a lot longer, and hopefully within 10 years I'm as good as him. But he brings up a point of a senatorial race in Arizona, obviously. And the Republican candidate was well ahead on election night, and then emergency voting booths get opened the day of and then are held open for weeks after the election. And slowly but surely, Kyrsten Sinema, the Democratic senator, eventually wins. And nobody calls foul except for, I forget the Republican candidate. She's like, what the fuck happened? But no investigation, and yeah, it just ends up being shit out of luck. So there's precedent already there. And I think it's way too obvious to cheat the president out of the election, because I think that the groundswell for him is so large that it would be impossible to cheat. But I think they can undermine the election at the state and federal level, and the House and in the Senate. But that's just my opinion. I haven't heard it put out there yet, but I think it's a decent theory. If you agree with me, or if you want to discuss a little bit further, feel free to hop down in the comments. I'm always perusing them. But anyways, guys, I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.